Parshas Metzora, the main focus that a lot of people discuss is lashon hara. You speak negatively about someone else. That's not a good thing to do. It's one of the ways you could get saras, this leprosy. Regarding this, the pasuk teaches us that sometimes a person's actual house could get afflicted with this sickness. And the pasuk says, "V'tziva kohen v'chaltzu es avanim." You remove the stones. You got to remove the walls of the house that are afflicted with this disease on Yud Daled Mem. Regarding this, the Mishnah in the Goyim in Yud Beis Mem says, "Oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheinho." Woe to the wicked person, woe to his neighbor. In other words, let's say a person has a type of townhouse. So now they're sharing a wall that's dividing in between. If one of the people who lives there gets this disease, then guess what? That shared wall has to get removed, and his neighbor is going to get negatively affected as well. So obviously, there's a lot to discuss on this, but let's first mention a point which isn't mentioned so often, and most people don't think of it. Most people will say, "Oh, it's too bad for that unfortunate neighbor who was completely innocent that now his wall is getting removed." However, this is not true. I saw in the Oitzos HaTorah, he quotes a sefer called Einei Shmuel on the Agarata in Shas, who quotes the Maharam Chagiz, who says in his introduction to his sefer Shasi Alechem that Hashem, with a lot of his mercy, he doesn't just judge a person according to the person's individual actions. Rather, Hashem assesses what will happen to his family, to his children. Are they fitting for this punishment? Not only that, he's going to judge the neighbors afterwards, and afterwards all of the people of the city, and then the entire world. And sometimes they have to get affected. If they're fitting, it will be decreed that they get affected. In other words, what's happening over here is that it could very well be that that so-called innocent neighbor wasn't so innocent. And that's why he's also getting negatively affected. The major elaboration on this statement, and over the past 13 years or so that we've had these chaburas and that we've been discussing Parsha, and we've been discussing Divrei Torah and the Yomim Tovim, over this time, if it's possible to calculate how many times these four words of this Mishnah and Nagayim that we quoted, I would say it's at least a handful. Because it's a very important Mishnah, Oy l'rasho, oy l'shcheno. Woe to the wicked person, woe to his neighbor. The obvious tie-in to this Mishnah is the another Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that says, Hisrochik mishachin ra. I think it's in the first paragraph, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, recordings we already have online on the Pirkei Avos playlist. Hisrachik mishachin ra means distance yourself from a bad neighbor. We have another similar Mishnah where the Mishnah says, Al tischaber l'rasha. Don't attach yourself to a wicked person. One interesting question that's asked is, wait a second, but the Mishnah says in the first parak, love people, bring them closer to Torah. Wait a second, we just said in another Mishnah, don't attach yourself to a wicked person. Don't distance yourself from a bad neighbor. How could that be? So Rav Dessler explains it depends. Who's going to affect who more, and is it going to be done in the right way? Right? That's, I think, also Rabbi Galinsky goes into that idea also. But anyways, the basic idea of why a person has to distance himself from a bad neighbor is because the Rambam writes in Hilchos Deos, Derech briyosoi nimoshech achas avivav. It's the norm of the world that people follow the surrounding area, their environment. That's the norm of the world. People get affected by their environment. It's an incredibly important idea. We find that we've discussed at length in Parshas Lech Lecha in the past. Hashem commands Avram, Lech Lecha me'artzecha. Leave your land. Why? Rabbeinu Bachai over there has, I wouldn't call it length, but he has a fair amount that he writes about this topic and says that Avram was commanded to relocate because of the negative environment that he was found in. And Rabbeinu Bachai over there proceeds to discuss the importance of not being in a bad and negative environment. And he says that that he says that if a person walks into a perfume store, a cologne store, they're gonna smell like that even if they didn't purchase anything. If you go by an outdoor fire that's made, you go near it, you're gonna smell like fire even though you didn't make the fire. If you walk by a gas station, even if you didn't purchase gas, a lot of times you're gonna smell like gas after. It's the same idea. A person gets affected by his environment. This is one of the explanations that they say the by Dayenu. Ilu karvenu l'fnei har Sinai v'lo nasan lanu es haTorah Dayenu. If you would have brought us to Mount Sinai, but you wouldn't have given us the Torah, we say to Hashem Dayenu, it would have been enough. There's many explanations. Would that really have been enough? One explanation, which I personally don't think is the best answer, is even just by being in the environment, you would have got positively affected. Really, that answer doesn't do justice. You have to come on to other answers, which we won't go into now. But nevertheless, it's an answer that is offered over there because you get something for the environment. This is where internships come into. Why do you have someone who's willing to wake up early and stay late hours all day and he doesn't get paid a dime? The answer is yes. Right now, he knows he's not going to get paid. During residency, he might not be making a lot of money, the doctor. But nevertheless, for the rest of his life, he knows he's going to be set because he has the skills and the tools that he learned from being in that environment. We get affected from our environment. So they ask the question, wait a second, why does Avram, the founder of monotheism, why does he need to be told to live in a good environment? You would think, like we just previously said, he will affect other peoples, he won't get affected. The answer is that no. Comes to Shimshon Pinkas Hatzal, even Avram, the founder of monotheism, as great as he is, he could still get negatively affected because when the Rambam says derech brioso, that it's the norm for people to get affected by their environment, that means it's inevitable. It will happen automatically, no matter what. Just like the sun rises in the east, Mizrach in the east, Mizrach is east. The shorish of the word, the root of the word Mizrach is Zarach, it shines because the sun begins to shine and rise, sunrise in the east, sunrise highway facing the east, you could say. And Mariv, the shorish of the word, the root of the word Mariv is Erev, at night. Because at night, when the sun sets, that happens in the west. So therefore, Mariv, just like that is natural, and that will occur. The Radak in his Sefer Hasharashim goes into all of these types of ideas with roots. It's actually a good Sefer, I bought it. But anyways, the point is that he says that, so too, you will get affected from in your environment no matter what. We say in the Haggadah, obviously we're fresh from Pesach right now, we say in the Haggadah, that Hashem says, the Haggadah says, Hashem did it himself, lo al yidei malach, lo al yidei saraf. The question is, why did Hashem himself had to come in and take over the assignment and what was happening in Egypt? Why couldn't he send messengers? Why couldn't angels do it? Furthermore, the Haggadah doesn't mention Moshe, except tangentially he's quoted in a pasuk, but doesn't mean to show that it was all Hashem. That's one answer. But the deeper idea that I saw brought down is that the angels weren't even able to go into Egypt because the tumah, the impurity was so low that even the angels would have got negatively affected. That's an incredible insight and idea. That's why the angels couldn't even go in. It was such a low level of impurity, mem teshari tumah, that even they couldn't have gotten in. So the environment is very important. Or HaChaim says, better to live in an area that has lions that could be roaming around and could be dangerous, rather than live in an area that has a bad spiritual environment. You got to be very careful with your environment. It says in the 6th parak of Avos, they asked Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, they said, come along, we're going to give you a ton of money, be a rabbi for us. One caveat, you can't learn living where you're living now, you have to come to us. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma said, even if you give me all the money in the world, ain't nedar el makom Torah. I'm only going to live in a place of Torah. Obviously, the Lubavitchers and Chabad have a different way of learning this episode over here, but this story. But any Rav who's going out of town, you have to figure out what is the explanation of the Mishnah. Seemingly, they're going to give him all the money in the world. He could open up, he can make a makom Torah there, a place of Torah over there. He could set up many shuls, many kolos, many yeshivas. It could be in a place of Torah. So there's many answers to this fundamental question, which many people do not properly research and study this and figure out the right explanation. One beautiful answer, which this is really the grand slam, so to say. Rabbi Yerucham Olshan writes, Rosh Hashiva of Lakewood, in order for a place to become a place of Torah, or what we call a makom Torah, that can't just happen. It has to happen naturally. It can't happen unnaturally. You can't just say we're going to throw money at it and it will. Money doesn't solve all problems. Let's be honest, right? You can't just say we'll throw money at it and then it'll work. Not going to happen. It's got to naturally turn into a place of Torah. Naturally, it's got to happen. That won't necessarily work. Another explanation is they didn't really want to listen to their rabbi. They just wanted someone, a public figure that would represent them, and it would pump them up. It would make them look better. They weren't going to listen to him at all. So therefore, he said, I'm not going to waste my life just because you're going to give me a lot of money to be a puppet, so to say, to be like a model, right? That's not what I'm into. Another explanation is, Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma knew they weren't going to listen to what he said. And they were just going to keep doing what they want, say, we could just fire you, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to listen. They were going to run their own show. And eventually, the rabbi would end up following what everyone else does because you get infected by your environment. I've seen, pretty young, 35, I've already seen this multiple times. Person is a certain way. Then he takes on a position as a Rav somewhere else in the middle of whatever it is, and he totally changes what he's been doing for 10, 20 years before. For the worse, obviously. You know, in many ways, talking in shul, other things also, all of these types of things. This is something that we need to think about. Are we in a good environment? And also, it's important, person's friends who they associate with. That's the lesson of Saras. Get out of the bad environment. You're in a bad environment, you don't realize you get affected no matter what. The people are loud, they leave trash on the street, they making noise at all the things that people do, whatever it is in a bad environment, you get affected. And a lot of times people get affected subconsciously. They don't even realize that it's happening to them, but it's happening. This is a lesson that the rabbis are teaching us. When a person purchases a house, a condo, an apartment, a major consideration has to be the environment. Who are your neighbors? What type of people are? Are they the type of people that we should be around? Are they going to be a good influence on us in all ways or a bad influence? That's the number one question that has to be asked. Forget about the interest rates if you're not paying all cash. Forget about how much is it, the location, are you saving good or not? That's important also. But the most important thing about real estate, location, 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 aka environment, environment, environment. All right, stop here, everyone. Have a good Shabbos.
So what's the guy who the person who lived next to the Baal Sher, his wall got destroyed? Says eight says what he's got to leave. Is that what the Mishnah is telling him, or
The Mishnah is teaching us he should have never been there. He should never been next to someone who's sinning like that.
But let's say
and if he is, then
guy
what?
moves in.
Run.
Yeah, then you got to reconsider. That's what this first idea is saying. Don't think that the guy's Mr. Innocent. He's at fault somehow, or else Hashem wouldn't have caused that to happen in that scenario.
Right.
The lashon hara could have been on the saras could have been on his body. It could have been on his clothing. In fact, it was on the house. He must be. Hashem doesn't just send it for nothing. Also. Yeah, he deserves some level of it. Yeah, and that's what it is.
That's what you should buy a.
Yeah,
that's what you should buy a 2-family house.
Well, you got to know who your neighbors. If you have good neighbors,
well, the problem is
there'll be good influence.
Right, you got to pick your neighbors, but then they move out.
Yeah,
that's a whole. Then I guess you got to move out if it's bad news.
Yeah. So
all right.
All right.
Go.
Yeah.
Oh.
Have a good Shabbos.
Shabbos. Oh.
Shabbos.